Okay, welcome back everyone to the Diverse Podcast. Today I'm here with Kobi Ampoma, who is lead talent acquisition at Otrium. Very excited to have Kobi here. I've actually learned a lot from him. So, I've followed him on Clubhouse, seen him run a few events, the Do Diverse event. That was actually the first time I've presented on this sort of topic. And you're somewhat of a bit of a role model for me because you've kind of got a lot more experience and you've been down this path before me. So a lot of the tips I share I learned from Kobe. So that's why I thought I'd bring you on. So yeah, welcome. Thanks so much. How are you getting on, first of all?
I'm good. Obviously, first of all, thank you for having me. I always appreciate speaking and sharing my insights with other professionals within the TA space. Sometimes you may think that the other person knows it all, but I'm also trying to learn from you, and I've learned a lot of things from you also on Clubhouse, on the few Clubhouse rooms that I've been in. So that's how we support each other, and that's how we also share our knowledge with others as well. So I'm ready for it today.
I'm sure you are. I'm sure you're born ready for this. So let's dive all the way in straight away and start with your background. Tell everyone a little bit about yourself and your role, and Otrium as well, if anyone doesn't know.
Okay. So I'm originally from Ghana, and I came to the Netherlands when I was 11 years old. I've lived in the Netherlands for 33 years now, and I have three siblings. And the reason why we actually landed in the Netherlands is my father was a political refugee who got his asylum actually in the Netherlands. So coming to a different country, trying to integrate, learning a new language, that was something that we had to do, so to say. And to be honest, I progressed pretty okay in terms of the education system. My dad was pro education, so every quarter when your report card came in, he made sure that he was present at school to hear what I was up to. If I listened, didn't listen, and lucky for me, having him in my corner really helped me to focus. And he was also someone who, whenever you did great in school, he also supported you whatever you wanted to do outside of school. So it was actually like a reward system, right? And me having three sisters, he wanted me to be a good example for my sisters as well. So that really helped making sure that I achieved, the highest education possible for me. And I have 2 degrees, one in banking and insurance, and then one in HR actually. So that's my background from an education purposes. How I landed in HR is I actually had a conversation with a deacon in my junior school, so to say, and he was asking me a lot of questions. And one of the things that he asked is, so what do you want to be the focal point in your career, in your job? And I said, well, I love working with people. I think I can connect well with people. And they said, you should try the human resource thing. So I went to that faculty. I thought, hey, this is definitely interesting. And then, I managed to obviously finish my education. I was actually one of the only guys actually doing human resources. I think there were like 150 students and maybe 2 guys. It was predominantly, this is, my age is going to show, this is like 22, 23 years ago. A lot of female were actually, doing HR compared to guys. And I think in the second year, more guys came into that. But finished my degree, did a few internships where I had a lot of different topics around HR. Mm-hmm. And lucky enough for me, and I know maybe that's a question that will come later, is I got an opportunity to start at Nike and work as an HR representative. And an HR representative is actually one of the entry-level roles when it comes to HR. Is you get a bunch of questions fired at you from an HR perspective, and you're trying to figure it out. You're looking at policies, you're looking at handbooks, you're looking into systems, and you're trying to answer those questions as best as you can. So that's how I started actually HR. And just a side note, I also met my wife in college. So, I was able to finish my degree and also a wife. So, 2 birds and 1 stone.
Very productive then. You're very efficient. Make use of your time at college. That's the first lesson here. No waste of time. I like it. No, really, really cool to hear the details of the backstory as well. And, within our community, there are a lot of candidates who are obviously predominantly based in the UK. So lots of candidates in the UK who are perhaps the first in the family to study here or have moved here, at a fairly young age. Are there any unique challenges you think if you are in that situation where you've come into a new environment, a new culture, or simply, your parents haven't just been down that route before you? Did that present any unique challenges, do you think? And how did you overcome them?
I think yes and no. It really depends a little bit on your background of your family. To be honest, both of my parents were highly educated, so they really reinforced that, and they also understood how important it was to be, present at a scorecard, right? So, there was no slippage for me to, have a bad report scorecard, so to say. But I think the challenges that it presents, especially if you're maybe second generation coming into a different country, is understanding the education system. I think a majority of our parents sometimes don't understand the education system, so they don't really fight for you. If you may be struggling with a specific a course, because one of the things that I, for example, got rid of at a very young age was maths. Because I was not great at maths, and then they said, drop that class. So I went on to do other things, but then I realized, if you want to go to university, a lot of education system has math as a very key element that you also need to have your good grades on. So if you don't really understand the magnitude of impact of making those decisions, then that could have maybe an impact down the line. But I think the challenge that, generally speaking, it presents is, a different environment, understanding your environment, understanding where you fit in, right? Understanding how you can build rapport with others. I was also one of the second, wave of project school in college. So you had 8 students who came together, work on different projects, and it became 8 to 4 to 2, right? So that's actually a little bit of a corporate environment where you work with other people to accomplish a goal, right? Or a project. So that was also a good foundation for me to understand how college was done and how that transitioned a little bit into the corporate environment. So, to answer your question, I'll say, understanding your environment, knowing how to fit in, ask questions, be curious, and don't be afraid to at least ask questions. That's what I did, at least. Yeah.
Yeah, and it worked out well for you. So, before we get into, I guess, some specifics around, applications, interviews, networking, perhaps, I've got a few other questions that I think you'd be able to help our listeners with, just from what I'm hearing from candidates. So let's imagine a younger sort of student, maybe first year, second year university. And they feel, and it's a little bit early, or maybe they're in their final year now and they're a little bit lost. So they don't know exactly what they want to do. They've not got a ton of experience already. So there's not that great reference point to say, oh, I should definitely go down this route. What would be your sort of advice there? So I'm not quite sure what I want to do with my career. Where should I start? What should my mindset be?
Yeah, I think your mindset should initially start with, connecting with people. So that could also be the challenge, connecting with people in different, how to call it, who have different jobs, or, and I always now start close. Start with your uncle, your nephews, your nieces. A lot of people that probably are in some kind of job, right? And you are trying to understand what they do. And typically, when you understand what people do, you also understand how it connects with other jobs, right? Because in a corporate environment, there's so much organization and functions that make an organization work, right? So I always say start there. Secondly, I think a lot of companies are also doing a great job sharing insights about opportunities that they have, what they look for, and have people who are also doing those jobs share their stories. So make sure that you take part in those kind of webinars or seminars or career events where companies are sharing about, hey, this is how it is to work here. Or I'm actually with Kobi, who's part of HR. If you want to know anything about HR, he can tell you about it. So I think that's the advice that I would initially give to students as well. And nowadays, when I was growing up, I actually learned how to Google, right? How to do searches in school. It was actually a semester that we focused on that.
That was a
Actually,
module.
So it was a
All right.
see how far we expect everybody to actually go on Google and put in some keywords, and a lot of information will pop up. So I will also say that Google is also your best friend. A lot of titles you can put in there, but I think networking, asking people in your circle, or maybe 2 circles down the line can help you get insights if you're stuck.
Yeah, I think that context is really important. I think a lot of times job descriptions aren't incredibly helpful, especially for early career candidates, because you read them, they're a little bit generic, they're a bit wishy-washy, they don't get into the fine detail of this is what you'll be doing in the job. And that's kind of okay if you're a mid-level candidate, because you've worked in a corporate environment before. You can think, oh, I was in this marketing team, so now I know how the commercial team is set up. I understand the job description. But for a young person who've never been in that situation, they don't really understand the context. So it's really important to chat to people. So let's have a bit of a play with that then. So if I wanted to work in HR,
Yeah.
what would you tell me that was like? What kind of skills are required, or what's it like on a day-to-day basis? Maybe would be a better question for someone who's
Yeah.
interested in that.
So when you talk about HR, it depends a little bit on the size of an organization, right? So if you look at the size of an organization, typically you have the HR function. Based on the size, it could be a 1 or 2 man band, or it could be 30, 40, 50 people working in an HR organization. So I'm going to go into real life when I started within HR. So I got an opportunity to work at Nike. Nike back then had around 1,000 people. So this is EHQ in the Netherlands. And I was part of the HR function. The HR function had 40 people working there. Okay. And the way that it was structured is that you had what they call an HR service center. Okay. That service center was actually responsible for answering questions that employees had around the HR topics, right? So think about, I'm sick, what do I need to do? Think about, I'm pregnant and I want to go on maternity leave. What options do I have? Think about, okay, my salary has 10 euros more or 10 euros less this month. How can it be? Think about, oh, actually, I'm moving from Amsterdam to Utrecht, which is another city in the Netherlands. What does it mean for my public transportation card, right? So you have a lot of topics, a lot of questions where people in the career are, and they could have a question about. So the HR Service Center initially was responsible for answering all those questions, right? Some of the questions is very easy to answer because you can say, okay, you want a card? Okay, just fill out these details. We'll apply with the public transportation. They will send you a new card. When you have it, bring the old one in, right? Or I'm moving. How many days do I have? Well, if you're moving first time in a year, you get 1 day. But if you're moving, if you have 2 days. But if you've moved before this year, then you already have 1. So these are small policies that the HR professional needs to always double check and then come back to an employee about. So that was one part of the function. The second part was the recruiting, right? So how do we make sure we bring people on board the organization? So obviously, when you talk about recruitment, is understanding what the business needs and how do we translate it into the market, right? The labor market, and identify the right talent for that. You go through a process, and then eventually you get offered a job. We can go a little bit more deeper when we come to what I'm doing right now, but that's also a function. Think about a company like Nike, right? So Nike has 1,000 employees working for EHQ only in Hilversum. And for EMEA, they probably have 5,000 people working there, right? In Spain, Germany, Italy, you name it. So Nike also want to make sure that they have a lot of benefits for the employees, right? So you had a function which is called employee benefits. They look at how is our pension structured. They make the deals, insurances. Nike had a lot of people who travel worldwide, right? If something happens, you need to be able to, make sure that the person can go to a hospital, everything is taken care of, and we bring you home safe, right? Think about how to call it the facilities where we are located, the insurance that is needed. Think about the vendors that we work with for making sure that people have food, right? We had a gym facility back then at Nike. All these elements, or physiotherapists on the location, all these benefits, somebody was thinking about, okay, what can we do for employees now that they're here, right? So that's seen as the benefits department. And then you had a team called employee relations. So employee relation was more about, long-term sickness, underperformance. How do we get people on track? And nowadays, I'll say mental health is a topic that we discuss more. But back then, it was like, okay, is it a mental thing? Is it a performance thing? So nowadays, also employee relations falls under that bucket as well. You have payroll. People need to get paid every month, right? So, today you have 5K on a monthly basis. Next month, you may be promoted and get 5.5K. We need to make sure that we are giving you your salary, the right salary. You move from Amsterdam to Utrecht, your commuter allowance may have changed. So all these things, payroll is responsible for that. And then Nike also had a team called International Mobility. So the International Mobility team is a team, which I also later went into, is supporting our mid-management organization with opportunities worldwide for Nike, right? So I would have a conversation with you, Toby, say, hey, Toby, you've been performing very well. Nike sees an opportunity for you to go to Portland, which was the core hub when it comes to design and creativity. We think you can, go there for 2 years, learn, and potentially come back either to, EHQ or to a different region based on, whatever, 2 years down the line where your career may be at. And that's also a whole process. So when you say, okay, I'm up for it, you need to move, you need to tell maybe your missus, you have kids, social security. There's a lot of things that come into international mobility, right? So that was also a team. So if you look back into Nike's HR function, you already have 6 or 7 different disciplines in the HR function, right? And you may have smaller companies who may have maybe 5 people doing a majority of this, maybe not at scale as Nike was. So those are the functions that you have within HR, if you look at it. So somebody's bringing people on board, somebody's asking questions, somebody's looking at performance, somebody's looking at international mobility. Big companies, the Shells, the Philips, the Heinekens, the IBMs. Those are all companies that have an international mobility because they continue to move people around to gain experience and translate that into different regions as well. So yeah, that's a lot of information, but from an HR perspective, a lot of opportunities as well, right?
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, I had no idea how broad it was, really. Having you break it down, I think is so helpful for context. And it's interesting to me that is very different from TA, right? Presumably the skills, the type of person you want might be a bit different for those 2 different elements of HR. So that's quite interesting to me. What would be the real difference? And why don't you explain a little bit about what you do now, because you've kind of crossed over, haven't you? Are there any, or is it normal for a HR professional to be able to do all those internal elements and now also the TA, which kind of involves some marketing and other elements as well? So, and tell us a little bit about your current role.
Yeah. So in my opinion, talent acquisition is a little bit broader than recruitment, right? So if you break talent acquisition down, in my opinion, it has 3 different elements. So one is understanding your organization, right? Having a good understanding of your organization, whatever you support, and being able to translate that into, okay, so what do we need from a people perspective to fit in? The second part is also, identifying the talent in the market, engaging with the community and building a talent pipeline. And then the third one I would say is, being a little bit more out there. So not being a recruiter who sits at your desk and that's all you do, but also create some kind of awareness around either yourself or the company so that people know, oh, if I'm interested to work for, right now I'm working at Otrium, I need to talk to Kobi or I need to talk to this person because they are responsible for this, that, and the third. So that's how I see talent acquisition compared to a recruiter. So a recruiter, in my opinion, you get a rack, you do your best to fill it, but talent acquisition is more of a 360 where you do a lot of stakeholder management. You talk a little bit more with your HR business partner who understands, who are our top performers? Are they moving on a year or 2 from now? Who can backfill that? Do we need to look into the market and identify people who can potentially fill those gaps, right? So it's a little bit more broader than just doing a rack. If you look at the skill set that is needed from an HR function perspective, a majority of what we do is evolves around people, right? If you look at the compensation and benefit and the payrolling, those are much more the analytical roles within HR, right? Every discipline has analytical roles, but payroll and compensation and benefits are much more analytically sound. If you look at employee relations and HR business partners type, is much more the communication, understanding policies, legislation, because you have labor laws based on the country, you have to deal with that as well, and the implementation that it has, so for example, in the Netherlands, you cannot just fire somebody, right? You need to build a case, a business case before you can do that. And typically that's a 3-month process because, you need to warn an individual, you need to give them the opportunity to be able to improve. Compared to, for example, in the US, where you can say, you know what, today you're fired, a week later or whatever, you're out. That's not how it works, especially in the Netherlands. So there's a lot of legislation that you need to keep in mind when you are dealing with people. And people know that, right? So, sometimes you have to mutually part ways, but sometimes it's also, you have to give an opportunity for an individual to improve. So if you look at HR, that's how I would say HR is right now, but it really depends also on the size of the organization. If you look at titles within the HR realm, and I'll try and give you a breakdown of that, you have an HR representative. Typically, that's a junior HR profession, somebody who's actually starting 0 to 1 year experience. You have an HR coordinator, somebody who's much more on the administration part of HR, coordinating, oh, Toby has a different salary now. Okay, we need to make sure we confirm that to him with paper. Hey, as of the 1st of July, this is what your salary is, this is what it means, and make sure that payroll receive that information that they can process it, right? So that's a coordinating role within HR. And it could be coordinated from a learning and development. I forgot learning and development. Actually, it's also an element within HR where you look at, okay, how do we develop our people? What do we need? What do they need? How can we facilitate that, right? So, for example, you have companies that give, a lot of basic trainings, Excel, presentation, product, whatever the case may be, is already embedded in their learning and development track. But you also have training that is really need to be developed. So what does a new manager need to do, right? When I became a new manager, this is what at PVH, you had what we call managing foundations. So you get the foundation, what is needed for a manager to know, when people get sick, how do you do performance overview? How do you do salary reviews? So all the different elements that you would need as a manager, you can actually train on. It was a 2 or 3 day, training to get the basic of that, right? And then you also have a next step, when you're leading bigger teams, when it's a little more complex, where you have a strategy or people who are at the senior level that report into you. So depending on the organization, you can also focus on all these elements that can help an individual be a better performer at their job. Because we can expect people to go into roles, but they don't always have the equipment or the tools to be able to do a good job at that. And we also now know not everybody is a good manager. Some people want that, but they're not, right? So that those are the things that it comes up when you tell me about, okay, so what does the HR function do, and the skills that it is needed.
That's brilliant. It's great to have that context and understand the importance of development as well, because the best people are going to leave if they're not getting that development opportunities. They're not being pushed and improving internally. So super helpful. If anyone's looking to get in HR, this is exactly what you need to be listening to. Let's switch gears now as well and talk about your advice. So and let's help some young people out here get some jobs. So you're in a great position to do that. Before, I guess my first question is around mistakes. So sometimes we kind of give advice that you should do this, you should do that. Let's have a quick think about what you shouldn't do, because I think that can be really valuable. What are some of the mistakes that you see from a talent acquisition perspective, whether that be, applications, interviews, what are the things that crop up typically for perhaps early career candidates? What are you seeing people do wrong?
Well, obviously people show interest in organizations and don't really do their research. So, and I've heard that several times, but it is really true. You need to do your research, right? One of the things that people also do is, I call people up. So I'll call you and I say, hey, Toby, you showed interest in Otrium. I would like to talk to you about this role. Is it a good time? And 99% of the time, people say, yes, it's a good time, but actually it's not a good time. So don't be scared when you get that call and it's not a good time to say, actually, Kobi, it's not a good time. Do you mind calling me in 30 minutes, right? So in that 30 minutes, you can go behind your computer. Okay, Otrium, what did I do again? What was my cover letter? What did I actually say? You know, buy yourself time. You can always make an appointment later as well, but just know that once I call you, I would like to talk to you. And if it's not a scheduled call, right, don't be scared to say this is not a great time, because especially for young starters, they apply for different opportunities, and you know, you don't always know the company that you are for against. So you need to think: is I talking to Shell? Am I talking to Nike? So you know, you need to.
That's happened to me before.
Yeah. So I think it's good if you do that, and don't be scared like, oh, if I hang up, they're not gonna call me again. No, I called you for a reason, because your application stood out. So buy yourself time and make sure that you are in a quiet place or whatever to be able to have that conversation. I think the second one, and that maybe that will come later, but the second one that I always tell people is that, you know, understand the job, right? And I've spoken about this a few times. So what I mean by that is, you know, if you read a job profile, have an idea, what am I actually going to do, right? And I'm talking about early career, 0 to 2 years experience, right? So if you read a job application for a junior recruiter role, think about, okay, based on what I'm reading, what am I actually going to do? How does my day look like? How does my week look like? How does my month look like? Make that vision for yourself and give it a percentage, okay? If you have an idea that this is a 60%, you have 60% know what I'm actually going to do. Your main objective, if you get invited for an interview, is to increase that percentage. And how do you do that? You do that by asking questions, okay? Because, you know, when you go to an interview and you're being asked questions, yes, it's okay to answer them, but you need to also ask questions so that you get a better picture of what you thought you were going to do. And if you are getting a good understanding of what you're going to do, then you can also show your added value, okay? And I would also say my third one is, especially a lot of young talent don't understand the value of their part-time jobs, okay? So a lot of people have part-time jobs. I had a part-time job. I worked for a supermarket. I worked for footlocker. I worked for a kindergarten school-ish, you know, with sport activities. And all these jobs, if you put your mind to it, you learn something, you know, and that something is easily transferable into what you are trying to accomplish, or you can give an example of what you did. And I'm going to give you one, Toby. So I used to work for footlocker in the stores, right? And if you know anybody who work in the retail space, you know, you come in, somebody comes in and says, I want the size 10 or size 11, right? You go downstairs, in this case it was downstairs, you go grab a box, and then you come in and say, hey, this is what we have, but we also have this color in case you're interested, you know? Okay, the customer says, that's what I want. Or they may ask you a question like, hey, what's the difference between this shoe and the one that came out like 3 months ago, right? Typically, all these retail spaces have people from head office coming in store and sharing product insights, right? That's already engagement with the head office. So you sit in those meetings, they tell you about the product, and you actually share that product insights with the customers, right? Because, you know, if I'm paying, just say something like 100 euros for a shoe, I want to know what is special between this shoe and what came out last time. So as a retail store associate, I need to be able to explain that to the customers. That's already customer experience that you're doing right there, right? Sometimes you also do cross-selling, and people are like, what is cross-selling? Cross-selling is when somebody's buying a shoe and you actually want them to also buy, you know, extra laces, or you want to buy a spray, the spray for the shoe that protect the shoe for a longer period of time. You know, those are all skills that you actually learn being in a retail space. You know, also sometimes, you know, even folding the product, making sure it's hanged properly in the store. Those are all skills you actually gain by working in a retail store. So I'm 100% sure that young talent people don't think about it that way, right? Because if you're just starting your career, you don't have a ton of experiences. However, you may have done some student part-time job, which has taught you a few trades. So I always tell people, think about the part-time job you had and write a few things. What do you actually learn there? You learn being on time. You learn having the discipline, right? You learn, talking to customer in a certain way. So these are all skills that you actually learn by even working in a retail store that you don't even think about.
I couldn't agree more. I hear this so often. It's about having pride in what you've done, what you've accomplished. I talk to candidates all the time who set up online businesses and websites and they don't put that on their CV, or, in the job description it says, oh, we want, great communication, leadership, teamwork and skills. And they say, oh, I've got a little bit at university, but not much other than that. And I say, what about that part-time job you had where you worked in a Peloton store? And they said, oh, okay, yeah, that's interesting. I actually sold, thousands of pounds worth of bikes in a week, and I liaised with 50 customers a day. And these are the incredible things that employers are looking for. And, it's hard enough as it is, but it's even harder if you don't back yourself. And it's about the framing, isn't it? To some extent, you need to dress up well what you did. You're not lying at all, but you've got to communicate it in a really compelling way to show why it was valuable. You can't expect the employer to just know, oh, you've done that role, so that means you're good at X, Y, and Z. You have to take them on a journey and bring it to life. And I love what you said earlier as well about really understanding the job. It goes back to what we were saying before, which is, for young people especially, it's hard to understand sometimes what a job actually means. But the more and more you understand the job by asking questions, and we'll come on to networking as well, the more in your answers you can show them that you're right for the job. Because essentially they're just watching you and they're trying to figure out, can Toby do this position? So the more and more I can show them that I can do it before they give it to me, the better. And ideally you do that on your CV, but if not, I can say, well, you know what, Kobe, if I was in this role, because I understand this role, I think we should do X, Y, and Z, and something really practical and tangible. That would be my suggestion. If they can walk away from a conversation thinking, Toby actually gave us a good idea there, that's the type of person they want to hire. So I really, really like what you said there. Let's now go for it, Kobe.
One of the things that I say is that typically you always have 2 or 3 conversations, right? When you go for a job, through a job process. So every opportunity you get, you're trying to increase, your percentage of understanding the job better. And that's when, okay, so the first conversation I have, they gave me this insight. In my second job interview, I'm going to use the insight and demonstrate how I can add value here. That's one of the key things that I also tell people. It's not a one and done. Sometimes you get lucky it's a one and done, but typically you have at least 2 conversations. So based on the previous interview, you can utilize the information gained to also add more value into the second one. That's one of the things that I would like to add.
Brilliant. Now let's dive into that a bit more. So that's a great nugget there. Interviews. Pick up information along the way that you can use to your advantage. What are your other top interview tips then? What else have you got to share?
Well, people don't always ask questions, especially when they're given the opportunity to ask questions. So I always tell people, make sure you have a few questions, right? So one of the questions that I always tell people to ask, how does success look like, okay, in this job? So if I'm here, how would you say I'm successful, right? Because when you have that conversation, then okay, what is also expected of me to be able to deliver, right? The second one, I'll say, okay, based on what I've shared in my added value could be, what are my key challenges in the coming 6 to 9 months, right? That will let you know if they give you the job, you need to potentially solve a problem in that time frame. Then you also can put your mind to that. And second or the last one, what I always tell people as well is that we go away when we speak to candidates asking this question: can he or she do the job? Or does he or she demonstrate enough motivation and drive to want to be able to do the job? So that is also something that I really want people to also understand, is that sometimes you can do the job, but are you really motivated, and does it come across, right? So you need to make sure that it comes across that you are keen and you are motivated. If you sit back and relax, I know it's also it has to do with personalities. Not everybody's outgoing or outspoken, right? But they need to go away thinking, hey, Kobi showed us that he understands what we are asking for, and we actually see him as part of our team. all right? Because he's motivated, he's drive, he's showing some curiosity. We like that. So that's actually the answer that a lot of hiring managers are trying to answer when you leave the building. Can he or she do the job? Or do we think that he or she is motivated to do the job? That's the two questions that we're asking, right? And did we get a lot of examples that demonstrate that he or she can do the job? I can't make it simpler than that.
And with that's good to make it so simple. And with the motivation, how do I show that then? I guess research, bringing energy, sharing the passion. Those are the best ways to show that.
Yeah, what I tell people as well is that, you know, some companies have a lot of news coming up, right? If you show that you know about the news that a company recently just published or just shared, that you mean you've done your research. So I was on a call the other day, and the person was telling me, hey, you know what? I saw that you guys raised, you know, your Series C funding, exciting times. It means growth opportunities. Those are things that I want to hear. So you need to do research on that as well and share that. Or it could be very linked to your particular role, right? You can say, for example, I'm looking for somebody in Italy right now. You say, hey, I saw that you did a post in Italy. Sounds very exciting. You know, I'm currently based in Spain, but, you know, are you also getting an opportunity in Spain? I'm just, you know, making this as we go. That's somebody who's thinking about, okay, if you're doing something there, maybe that means you could maybe doing something here as well. So, you know, motivation cannot be taught. It really needs to be something that is genuine and authentic in yourself. And also see that if you can relate to whatever the company is doing, right? So I tell people as well is that you want to work for companies that you have an affiliation with, or that you see yourself working there. Just don't apply for random. I may not go into a company that is focused on energy because I don't have a passion for energy per se. So think about that as well. Like, do I want to be in that environment? Am I going to get a little energy? Will I do research on my own working here? If the answer is yes, then go for it.
Yeah, and if you're really struggling to communicate your motivation for the role, chances are, you know, it might not be the right role and company for you. It's so easy to write a cover letter and to sound passionate when you really, really want the role. I've noticed that in myself when I've done cover letters in the past for an opportunity it wasn't quite right. It would take me a long time to write it, and it'll be a bit of a challenge. When it's the right role for you, it's like a breeze. It's a walk in the park. That leads us on nicely to a topic that I know is closest to your heart and important when it comes to landing these roles, which is networking. So why, for someone who's a little bit skeptical, maybe they've never done it before, so never reached out to someone to try and get a job opportunity. They're a little bit scared of sounding like they're just asking someone for something else, and they know how busy, you know, we are and you are in this world. What would be your advice for that person on networking?
I think networking is very important this day and age because a lot of people have landed opportunities just through networking and by sharing, you know, their stories with that individual, right? So if you are a recent grad or you're trying to graduate and you go to networking events and you have a chit chat with somebody, you know, during a lunch, a moment or a break session, people remember those stories, right? People remember like, oh, I was actually at this event. I spoke to this Kobi guy. You know, he came across as very eager. You know, it really, really helps. And maybe this is also a little bit of my personality, but I believe that the majority of the people want to do good, right? If I can help another individual just by sharing my network or encourage them to call somebody to get extra insight and it's not costing me anything extra, why wouldn't I do that? I think generally speaking, and a lot of people are also very passionate about what they do. So if you talk to somebody about what they do, they're very passionate about it. And the question that you can ask can also help them think about you in the next time. And it's not easy because I know, you know, sometimes you need to travel, you need to get up early. But if you reflect back, if I look back into my career, a majority of the opportunities I've gotten has come through my network, right? So similar here at Otrium, you know, I shared that I was looking for opportunity and somebody said, hey, Kobi, you should talk to this person. You know, that's how it came about. So I truly believe that through your network, you can accomplish a lot and you can start small. You can start family circle, you can start with school, you can start with different student bodies. There are all these different opportunities to connect with others who are either going through the same journey or can help you along with your own journey.
Absolutely. And I think don't be discouraged as well if you're trying to network with someone who is maybe at your target organization and they didn't reply to you. It happens very often. I get messages from people that I really want to reply to, but then a lot of more come in and you just miss it, you forget. So, don't get disheartened if you don't get a reply the first time. Keep going. And a lot of these big corporates, there's so many different people to reach out to, right? So if you want a job at Nike and the first person doesn't reply, there's a lot more people. There's 40 people in the HR team, so there's a lot there to go after. So that's really important. Well, I guess I do want to ask about Nike then specifically. I've had so many candidates that are interested in working there and desperate to work there. It's a great place to work, I'm sure. What would be some of the things they look for, do you think, in an applicant? So if I want to stand out with my application and get a job at Nike, what kind of things should I have in mind?
Well, when I was at Nike, one of the things that really came through is obviously Nike is a big sporting brand, right? So a lot of traits when it comes to sports is really represented in how the company is also portrayed, right? So teamwork, training, making sure that you get it right. You fail, you go back at it again. These are all a little bit of mentality elements that really also resonates within the company, right? So I will always use Nike as an analogy, and I think it's a great place to work where teams, where the team value is very important, because together you are working towards one common goal, right? So if you have those traits and if you can demonstrate, examples that you show, like, you sacrificed, you contributed, you took the lead, you helped. Those are all different elements that really comes to life. And obviously Nike is a big company when it comes to different disciplines that they have, right? But, when it comes to individual mindset, it's all about, high performance. And I used to tell people all the time is that, if you manage to work at Nike for 2 years, it means you're doing something good. Why? Because Nike has a performance review, like every 6 months. You have at least a touch base with your manager, every 2 weeks. So there's always like, hey, how are you doing? Are you on track? Goals, objectives. That, if that's not for you, then you're not going to survive. So I've always said, if you can manage 2 years at Nike, it means that you're at least doing something right. And also what you see at Nike is that people get promoted pretty quickly because people see potential. So there's also a culture where a potential is seen and people are given the opportunity to execute. However, what you also mentioned about the networking is also very important. So within Nike, at least when I was there, networking was a very important part. Why? Because you get insight in different parts of the organization that can also play a very critical role in what you are doing as part of the whole, let's say, machine, right? And also sharing your maybe aspiration or goals. Also let other people within the organization know that, hey, Kobi may be interested in this direction, right? And I think I mentioned this before in one of the sessions. Decisions around your career are made when you're not in the room. So if people don't know what your aspirations are or what direction you want to go, it's very difficult to say, oh, actually, this opportunity coming up, we should think about Kobi as well, right? Because nobody knows. So that's why networking also plays a very important role, because you need to let at least a few people know where you're trying to go, right? And they can help with advice, they can help be your sponsor, they can maybe help be your mentor, but that is also very important, I think, in a company like Nike.
Brilliant, brilliant. And we haven't got too long to go. So I know you've well, every time I talk to Kobi, sometimes I see his calendar and it's just back to back all day long. So he's a very busy guy, so we can't be too selfish. So I'll give you a bit of space now to share anything that maybe we haven't covered. If my questions haven't sparked some energy inside of you, is there anything else that you want to share that we haven't covered that any young people out there could benefit from in their careers?
Yeah, I think the advice that I would give people generally is that, it's very important to reach out, right? It's very important to, if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, create one. It's very easy to see what a great LinkedIn profile looks like. There are a lot of different tips and tricks on how you should have representation, at least of yourself, what you do, what direction you want to go. So I think that's very important this day and age. And also, one of the things that we talked about on LinkedIn is, you want to make sure that your picture on LinkedIn reflects, somebody you are, and not have a beer can, on your LinkedIn picture, so to say. It needs to represent you in a right possible way. So I think having representation on LinkedIn is very important. Then you start to build your connection, right? So who am I connected with? Who do I want to connect with? What's the storyline about myself? I think that's also very important as well. I think this day and age, there's so many information out there on jobs, job content. Start reading about it. Start thinking about whatever education system you're in right now. It could be finance, it could be business development, it could be HR. Start reading, okay, there are a lot of great articles about different career paths, right? Start trying to get insight into those. That will really help you also navigate. Okay, I've read something about HR. I think I have an idea what it is all about. If I'm getting an opportunity to talk to people about it, at least I have more information to share. And then the last but not least, we talked about it already. Start putting things in your backpack. I call it the backpack, right? I like to use analogy with sticks. In your backpack throughout your career, you're putting things in. You never know when you need it, but you may need it, at a certain point, and then you take it out, right? So it's about your networking, it's about your experiences, it's about your part-time job, all these things you put in your backpack. And there's a famous quote, and I forgot exactly how it's written, but people want to work with others who are good hang. Okay, so what do we mean by that? So when we interview people for a surgeon, right? At the end of the day, we're going to take the surgeon who we build the best rapport with, who we can also have maybe drinks with, or we can just be around, right? So people want to be around people who are genuine, who are authentic, and who want to play a part in where the company is trying to go or is headed. We don't want to work with people who are complaining all the time and don't come up with solutions, right? So also you as an individual, it doesn't matter your profession, we want to work with people who, are authentic and want to contribute. That's also very important because I've seen people not getting opportunities because they were not, people didn't want to work with them, right? They may be good at a job, but we don't, this Kobi guy, very annoying, man. We don't want to work with him, So also think about how you're perceived in the office space, in a corporate environment space, because also how you are as an individual is important. It's not all about the work that you do, but who you are as an individual. So also think about that, what role you play being part of a corporate setting.
That's brilliant. I really love that, Kobi. That's great. And I'm stealing the backpack analogy for sure. Pulling out your boomerang and your bow and arrow. You don't know what you're gonna need. I like that a lot. So last question from me, and I'll let you go. A bit of a left field one, Kobi. So whose career do you admire? So it could be a celebrity, it could be someone else in your field. Is there anyone you look up to and you've learned from that others might be interested in as well?
Yeah. Well, to be honest, it's not really a celebrity, but it's a very good friend of mine who, had a similar upbringing as myself. Actually, grew up in the UK from Ghana, but he went to the UK and I went actually to the Netherlands, so to say. He ended up being a very senior executive of Nike. I met him actually through his interview process at Nike when I was going down the stairs and he was coming down the stairs, and one of the colleagues said, "Hey, Kobi, meet Danny." And Danny is interview actually, and he was from Ghana originally. And what I like about Danny is that he's a very hard worker. He's an individual that people want to be around, and he's always, shared, his insider story. And I remember this is 2017. Yeah, I think 2017. I was with him. We went to the All-Star game together in LA. And there was a Nike event where we had junior people from sales, retail there. And they were all like, "Oh, we have this VP guy in there." And he was like, "Guys, listen, and I know you're acting a little bit funny around me, but I'm just a normal guy. I can have a decent conversation." I was I've been a young kid before. So how he also present himself to, especially in companies where you have a lot of hierarchy, he was just a normal guy, shared a lot of insight. And I remember he talked about careers. He talked about, if people were seeing things that they didn't agree with, how they should share that information. And I believe the next day when we were having breakfast, he got at least 3 people reach out to him and thanking him for that he actually took the time to have this conversation, right? Because sometimes in the corporate setting, you're like, oh, these people are very far out here compared to, the little guys here. And he's always been an inspiration for me, and I've learned so much from him, from his leadership style as well.
Yeah, I love that. That sounds like a guy I want to meet as well, and he'd be a good addition to the podcast. So put a word in, and yeah, and I like that as well for the young people listening. If as you're growing through your career, these are the type of people you want to emulate and be like, and that's how you want to treat other people when when you all get up to VP status. So yeah, Kobi, let's leave it there. That was a cool episode. I really enjoyed that. You dropped a lot of knowledge bombs, so can't wait for this one to drop and everyone to hear it. So thanks again for your time. Really, really do appreciate it.
Toby, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure. You're almost my namesake, so that makes it very special as well. But I really appreciate what you're doing for talented people coming up. And I think this is going to be very inspiring, but it's also going to help people get opportunities they're maybe looking for.
Amazing. Cool. Let's leave it there. All right.